Okay, so we mentioned that there are fees involved. So the library is no longer paying a subscription to support a journal being run. Then that means someone's paying for each article that comes through. The most typical way that we see that done is the article processing charge. And this is almost exclusively for articles that are accepted for publication. So you're not paying anything up front, not knowing whether or not your article will pass peer review at the journal. But instead, when the journal accepts your paper, then they'll charge the fee. So how many open access journals are actually charging these? It's an important question, because I think the assumption is, well, Gold Open Access is taken over, everyone pays a fee every time they publish open access. A survey, this is again from a few years ago, no one's done it again to my knowledge, they found that over half of the 23,000 researchers they surveyed had recently published open access with no fee. This would mean, again, that it was being supported by the institution, by the publisher, in some other capacity. Of journals listed in the directory of open access journals, only 26 say they charge an APC. I think it's fair to admit that some of them probably don't mention it on that site. So, but I think even if you assume maybe this is only half of the true number, I think you'd still find that a large number of journals don't charge anything. And it's finally important to note that many publishers also offer waivers for researchers with limited funding. This can be sometimes no questions asked. It can be sometimes dependent on the country of origin for the researcher. But it's important to keep in mind that if you are looking into an open access journal that you think would be a great fit for your work, but their publication fee might be an issue, it's worth writing to the editorial office and asking what their waiver policy is. Okay, so the fees, probably the most interesting part to most of you. I do want to set the stage by saying that a number of traditional journals do actually charge page fees, and certainly they charge if you want to have color in your figures. Being online only, an open access journal, in general, they want you to put color in your figures. It's a better experience for the readers, and there's no extra cost to them because an electron on a screen costs the same. It's not like they're putting extra ink in the printer. So in some cases, you could end up paying a few $100s, and certainly a couple thousand if you really wanted color figures in a traditional journal. But what do we know about open access journals? First to start, just to let you know, there's a big range. And one at the higher end is Nature Communications. So it's certainly a very exclusive journal that they're building. And that costs over $5,000 for an individual article to be published. Some of the more selective journals like PLOS Biology, BMC Medicine, or BMJ Open, which is the open access journal published by the same, the British Medical Journal used to be, the BMJ. So somewhere in the range of $2,000 to $3,000 for an article. PLOS One, which I mentioned, is sort of a paradigm shift mega journal. We'll talk about that in just a second, what that means. Its fee is about $1,500. Scientific Reports, which is a similar journal run by the Nature family, is the same price. In fact, they've followed PLOS One in terms of pricing pretty consistently. Some other journals that operate on this model might be somewhere in the $1,200, $300, $1,300 kind of range, like AIP Advances. There are examples of things that are less expensive. So Hindawi operates a portfolio of a couple hundred journals, and they range, many of them are free. Sage Open is targeted at humanities, which I actually have a slide about in a moment as well. And that one costs $395, so much cheaper. I think you see a lot of this variation. Part of it is, the power of the brand in some cases, and a lot of it is based, however, on the acceptance rate of the journal. So if you are, let's say, getting 100 submissions and you're only going to accept 10 of them, you may still be doing peer review on an additional 40 of those and incurring some cost to your editorial operations. And that means then that the payment from the articles that are actually accepted needs to be higher to cover the same amount of work. So largely that's what you see if you look at these more carefully, is that the more selective a journal is, the higher its article processing charge. Not necessarily linearly, though. In some cases, I think they really are just basing it off of of the brand and the exclusivity that's perceived. So a recent study went and looked through as many of these as they could find, and found a range of $8 to $3,900. So it didn't have Nature Communications, for instance. The median was $800, and the average, which of course this can be skewed a little bit by the higher end, was around $900. And that was true whether you're looking at the journal cost or at the cost of each individual article that was published in that corpus. So expensive, but not too bad. Again, showing that there are a number of journals that are on the cheaper side. If you look specifically at the journals that are in Scopus, so that means they've been indexed internationally and considered to be pretty strong, editorially rigorous journals, the average there was closer to 1,400. So still pretty manageable, right around that +1 kind of range. This is where you're likely to wind up if you're looking to publish in a gold open access journal.
To view the full video of this and all of our other webinars for bioscientists at the bench, please visit bitesizebio.com/webinars.